This episode of the Rogue Deck Builder is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 source for games and gaming accessories, and by GatheringMagic.com, the #1 source for Magic the Gathering news and articles. Hi there, it's Kevin with Gathering Magic and Roguedeckbuilder.com, here with a wrap-up video for the Devotion to Rakdos. I think this deck performed very well. We went 3-1. That's not too shabby, and all of those were pretty much tier 1-ish decks. Our one loss was definitely not a tier 1 deck, but the rest of those decks were pretty common. You do see a lot of those here in the metagame here on MTGO. Again, we beat the GP. I still don't know if that was the first place or second place deck that at the GP, the Japan GP recently, with the Lviv Sky Knights and the Zathar Necromancer type humans deck. The Esper humans, I guess is what you'd call it. And that was a pretty easy matchup, as well as mono black. Well, this was the mono black splash green for the Golgari Charms and the Abrupt Decays. Again, that seemed to be an incredibly easy match, with Rakdos' return being a pivotal empty his hand on that game number 2 against the Scavenging Ooze. So I kind of like this. I don't know what this... I think that the Devotion of Boros has an advantage in certain matchups, especially the more aggressive matchups, as they bring in War Leader's Helix. They can gain them life and help them stabilize. And then, of course, you have the Dragon, Stormbreath Dragon, which can actually fit in this deck just as easy as it fits in that deck. And if that's the case, I would maybe go to a combination of Underworld Cerebruses and Stormbreath Dragons, or just go, it depends. It definitely take a lot more testing which one I want more of, or what combination I want. Maybe in the sideboard, I'd bring in some dragons. Cards that I did not like. I did not like Perforos in this deck. Even though I do see the combination with Underworld Cerberus and Perforos, it didn't seem like I brought it in enough. I love Chandra Pyromaster. I think it's great. You didn't get to see the Power Spike Jester, but I think this card definitely deserves a place in the 15 sideboard. I'm thinking maybe Magma Jet can go out for Doomblade. I think that Doomblade is better in almost every scenario than Magma Jet, because it does allow you to kill, maybe besides Pack Rat, but I guess Anger of Gods could be in your sideboard instead of Magma Jet, or just more Mizium, probably more Mizium Mortars. Other than Doomblade does give us, or Ultimate Price, not Doomblade, does give us an answer against the Desecration Demon, which might, again, I don't think that's very a problem, but a card like Doomblade would answer the Master Waves. And in playtesting, before I actually shot this series, Mono Blue was a difficult matchup. I would have to draw. Sometimes it seems so Mizium Mortars dependent, and Rakdos' return was so terrible. Underworld Cerebus was so terrible, and I just have to get my God drawn. It seemed like the Blue's subpar draw was better than my subpar draw, and our God draws were pretty much a wash. I mean, if I got my God draw, I'd win. It depends on who went first, because at least, chaining the Fanatic Amoguses when you have like a Boros Reckoner out, and they've tapped it down with a Tidebiter Mage. Who cares if they've tapped it down? You're still getting there for the direct damage for Fanatic Amogus. But then when you take away the God draws, the subpar draws with mono blue are so much better in that matchup than my subpar, because Master Waves dodges all of my removal. So I'm thinking that maybe if you're worried about the mono blue Devotion deck, you'd put in cards like Ultimate Price or Doomblade in the sideboard. And the thing I like about this deck is it does have so many options that you can go. You can go cards like Lightning Strike. You can turn this into a more aggressive build with Lightning Strikes and Magma Jets, or you could turn this even into a more control build and play a few more Hammer Perforoses and just higher drops like the Stormbreath Dragons. And you turn it into kind of a mid-range deck that just tries to stabilize with cards like Frostburn Weird and Burning Emissaries, and go over the top of them with Stormbreath Dragons, Underworld Cerebruses, and big beaters like that. So again, it definitely takes some more playtesting. I think that 23 lands is perfect for this deck, and 4 shrines is perfect, because this deck is very shrine dependent. Rakdos' return seemed like a card I always wanted to see in a bunch of matches, but it might be better off just putting 2 of these sideboards and putting something else main board. Again, I don't know what that'd be, whether it be Dreadbores or whatnot. I did like the one of Timerit. That was an awesome interaction when he tried to Azorius Charm the Underworld Cerebus. I was able to kill it with the Timerit, get all my dudes back, and then just basically go off the next turn. So love and Spike Jester for the aggression. Again, it might just be Perforos, and maybe I'm just not using Perforos properly, because it seems like Devotion would be really easy to get with Perforos. to get him out on turn 4 or even possibly turn 3 active as a 6/5 with a Burning Tree Emissary and like an Ash Zealot on board. So maybe Perforos does need to come in this deck, and maybe going down on the World Cerebrus's as a sideboard option is better. Reef for the Bones didn't really like. I think Chandra Pyromaster is so much better in every case, so I think Reef for the Bones is definitely a card we could cut. And 2 of Chandra seems about right, but there's definitely, again, room for improvement in this deck. I'm going to definitely test the Stormbreath Dragons when I get a hold of some. Again, they're expensive on MTGO, so I just don't want to fork over the tickets for them. I am a cheapskate. So, and then again, going more heavy removal like the Doomblades is definitely something that is worth considering. So I really love this deck, though. Again, it's not I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism saying, hey, this isn't a rogue deck. Hey, this isn't anything new. This is Boros Devotion. It is. But as far as I know, not many people have messed around with the actual Rakdos aspect of it. And I'm absolutely loving this version. I mean, Rakdos' return, again, Dreadbore is pretty much I think it's actually better than Chain the Rocks. Chain the Rocks does not allow you to kill Planeswalkers. Yes, it is 1 mana casting cost less, but is that big of a deal in the format? As a lot of times you're going to be casting Chain of the Rocks on like turn 4 against a Desecration Demon or something. You're not going to be using it as early as turn 2, and turn 2 or turn 1, even turn 1, you'd have to, best case scenario is you could shock yourself with a Sacred Foundry, but turn 2 is more likely Chain of the Rocks, and you can use a Dreadbore turn 2. So I'm liking Dreadbore over Chain of the Rocks, and I'm liking Rakdos' return over like War Leader's Helix, as I believe it's a better mana dump. We didn't get to see many. I've tested this out on turn 4. A very common scenario is like turn 2 Frostburn Weird, turn 3 Burning Tree Emissary into like another card, or even turn 4. So you go like Ash Zealot, Frostburn Weird, and then turn 4 Burning Tree Emissary into it's like a 5-point damage Rakdos' return, empty their hand, kill off their Jace that's just +1. I mean, the scenario is played out a lot. Or in my teaser, I believe I'm able to do 4 damage to the face and unload his hand completely with all of his answers had an Esper, or an Elspeth, and 2 Anger of the Gods, which would have wiped my board, and completely just won the game because of Rakdos' return. I think this card is very underrated in the format right now, especially if we start to move over to a mid-range build. So the only matchup we did lose was against the hyper-aggressive red pump, I don't know what they call it, just mono red blitz, I guess, with madcap skills and Titan strengths and whatnot. And again, if I think that I did some terrible molds. I should have molded a lot of those hands and just mold until I found like a Frostburn Weird Boros Reckoner type hand and kept it. And again, you can go Magma Jets or even Doomblades in the sideboard to make it a much favorable matchup against any of the hyper aggressive decks. So all in all, this deck is very customizable. It's very easy to just put in a few cards here and there depending on your metagame, and make this a more competitive deck than even you see right now. So open to your suggestions. Don't like the Overgrown Tombs for one. I'm going to take these out for sure. Maybe just go down to 1 of or 2 of. And I think you definitely need more mountains here. The only thing you actually need a black for is the Dreadbores and the Rakdos' return, which isn't that big of a deal if you don't see it. So, and then Nike the Shrine of Nyx can add black if you got a Rakdos Shred Freak out, if you have to cast a Dreadbore with a Nike the Shrine of Nyx, adding the black from the Shred Freak. So it's definitely doable. So anyway, loving this deck. Again, open to your suggestions. This has been Kevin with Gathering Magic and RogueDeckbuilder.com. Thanks for watching.